The restaurant was buzzing with the late-morning crowd, clinking silverware, soft classical music, the smell of fresh bread mixing with roasted coffee. Everything seemed ordinary at first glance, yet the tension in the air was palpable. At a corner table, a young black woman stood rigid, her hands trembling as she clutched a small purse. Her eyes, wide with fear and determination, darted nervously toward the towering figure behind the counter. "Miss, I said water only? Are you joking?" The manager barked, his voice sharp, cutting through the murmur of the diners like a knife. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a crisp black suit with a silver nameplate that gleamed under the restaurant lights. "Manager Mr. Collins." Every word dripped with condescension, disdain, and a hint of cruelty that made the woman shrink in on herself. I just wanted water for my children," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with both fear and resolve. Her words carried a soft melody of honesty, yet they fell flat against the wall of arrogance facing her. Water, not a meal, not a fancy drink, just water. But to Mr. Collins, this simple request seemed like an insult to his meticulously curated restaurant experience. "You think you can waltz in here, sit in my fine establishment, and ask for only water for your kids?" he sneered, leaning over the counter. His eyes narrowed, scanning her as if he were weighing her worth. "Do you even have any money, or are you just here to freeload off me?" The woman's jaw tightened. Her hands shook harder. The din of the restaurant seemed to fade around her, leaving only the piercing laughter of Mr. Collins and the sharp sting of humiliation. "Please, sir, I don't want trouble," she murmured, clutching her children's small hands under the table, hiding them from view. Her little ones, oblivious to the social hierarchy that had put their mother in such a terrifying position, clung to her skirts. Their eyes were wide, innocent, and trusting, looking up to her for strength she desperately tried to summon. "Trouble! This is trouble!" he spat back, his voice rising as he gestured toward the empty glasses he had just slammed down on the counter. "This is embarrassing! You're embarrassing yourself and your children!" A hush fell over the restaurant. Forks paused mid-air, coffee cups stopped in their tracks. A few diners exchanged uncomfortable glances, their eyes shifting away, unwilling to get involved. The woman felt the weight of every gaze that refused to meet hers, each one silently condemning her for daring to exist in this place. The world felt like it had narrowed down to this single moment, a moment of public shaming that seemed impossible to escape. But she didn't move. She squared her shoulders, her lips trembling as she whispered again, I only wanted water for my children." Mr. Collins' eyes burned with contempt. "You're mocking me? You think I run a charity here? You and your kids don't belong in this restaurant. Get out, now." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. Pride, fear, and desperation warred within her chest. She could feel her children trembling, clinging to her like lifelines, and she knew she had to stay strong, not for herself, but for them. And then he did the unthinkable. He leaned even closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant for her alone. "You think your pathetic little story matters to me, that your life matters to anyone here? You're nothing, just a poor girl begging in my fine restaurant. Pathetic." The words hit her like stones. She felt her knees weaken, the floor tilting beneath her. Her face burned, not with anger, but with shame and helplessness. Around her, the world continued to move, indifferent. The other diners pretended not to see, not to hear. Some whispered to themselves, shaking their heads. A young couple across the room avoided eye contact entirely, afraid of being drawn into the scene. Then, in a quiet, almost inaudible voice, she said something that would make a stone-hearted person pause. "Please. I just want to feed my children. I don't want anything else, just water." Her words were a plea. They were honest. They were raw. And yet Mr. Collins laughed, a short, bitter laugh that bounced cruelly off the polished marble counters. "You think your children matter here to me? No, no, no. They are your burden, not my concern. Now get out before I call security." And as he gestured angrily, his hand cutting through the air like a blade, the woman felt a hand clutch her shoulder. Not a strong hand, just a small, tentative grip. She looked down to see her little girl's tear-streaked face staring up at her. The mother's heart constricted. She wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but she couldn't. She couldn't leave her children in fear, and she couldn't give up. Just when she thought the humiliation could not get any worse, a hush swept over the restaurant. A figure stepped forward from the crowd, a presence so commanding yet so calm that every eye in the room turned toward them. The woman's heart skipped a beat, hope sparking faintly in her chest. The man was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit with a quiet dignity that seemed to radiate authority. His eyes, sharp but gentle, scanned the scene. There was no judgment there, only understanding and an unspoken promise that something was about to change. Mr. Collins, oblivious to the silent power now in the room, sneered at the man. "And who are you? You think you can stop me?" The woman could barely breathe. She had no idea who this stranger was, only that their presence made the air feel lighter, as if injustice itself were beginning to tremble. And then, in a voice that was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority, the stranger spoke. "That's enough. Leave her alone." The restaurant froze. Silverware hovered mid-air. Conversation ceased, all eyes fixed on the manager, whose face was now a mask of shock and disbelief. He had expected compliance, obedience, subservience, but instead he found resistance in the most unexpected form, from a stranger who did not just command the room with words, but with presence. Mr. Collins opened his mouth, but no words came out. The woman, her body shaking with relief and uncertainty, clutched her children tightly. For the first time that day, she dared to hope. The stranger stepped closer, their gaze locking onto Mr. Collins. "Do you have any idea who you are speaking? And more importantly, do you have any idea who this girl is?" The room held its breath. The tension was electric, every diner leaning forward in silent anticipation. The manager's smug arrogance was starting to falter, replaced by a creeping unease. And then, in that heartbeat of suspended time, the stranger revealed a truth that would make everyone in the room gasp. "I am the CEO of this company, and this young woman, she is someone I've been watching. She is someone very important to me." Gasps rippled through the restaurant. Eyes widened. The woman's hand flew to her mouth. Her children stared in awe, not understanding the full weight of what was happening, but understanding that their mother's nightmare was about to turn upside down. Mr. Collins' face paled, his arrogance cracking under the weight of exposure. The tables had turned in a single, shocking moment, but the stranger didn't stop there. Their gaze softened as they turned to the woman, kneeling slightly to meet her eye level. "You are safe now," they said. "I will take care of you and your children." The woman's lips trembled, tears spilling freely now. She had been humiliated, terrified, and alone, and yet in this moment she felt the faintest flutter of hope, fragile but undeniable. The scene froze, the crowd silent, the tension at its peak. But little did the cruel manager know, his life was about to be turned upside down because a stranger standing in the crowd knew a secret about this young mother that would shock everyone. The camera pulls back. The restaurant scene dissolves into a soft blur, fading into the past, where it all began that morning. Let's go back to how this story truly began this morning. The sun had only just begun to rise over the worn rooftops of the small neighborhood, casting a soft golden glow over cracked pavements and peeling paint. In a tiny, dimly lit apartment tucked between two larger buildings, a young woman stirred from her restless sleep. Her name was Aaliyah, a black mother in her mid-20s with eyes that shone with warmth and resilience, despite the hardships etched into her delicate features. Her bedroom, if it could even be called that, was shared with her 3 children. The youngest, a baby no older than 6 months, slept in a makeshift crib cobbled together from an old wooden dresser drawer. The middle child, a boy of 5, clutched a threadbare stuffed lion as he slept beside her, while the eldest, a quiet girl of 8, lay curled under a thin blanket, her small hand gripping Aaliyah's shoulder even in her sleep. Aaliyah's life had never been easy. She had grown up in poverty, raised by a mother who worked multiple jobs just to put food on the table. She had learned early how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could be taken away. Yet despite the hardships, she had inherited a gentle, unyielding spirit, a heart that refused to harden even in the face of suffering. She quietly got out of bed, careful not to wake the children, and moved toward the small kitchen. The room was sparsely furnished, with an old stove that had a crooked burner and a single cracked counter. Aaliyah reached for the small jar of rice she had managed to save, counting each grain with meticulous care. Her stomach clenched not from hunger, for she had long since grown used to the gnawing emptiness, but from worry. Her mother, Mrs. Jenkins, was sick again. Aaliyah had been saving every penny for weeks to buy the prescribed medicine, but it wasn't enough. Her mother's health had been deteriorating steadily since a serious illness 2 years prior, and without proper care, her condition worsened by the day. Aaliyah had taken it upon herself to manage the household, her mother's treatment, and the children, all without complaint, though the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. The morning began with the usual ritual of quiet chaos. She fed the baby, dressed the children, and prepared a meager breakfast of oatmeal flavored with a pinch of sugar. Her little girl, Maya, watched her with wide eyes, sensing the worry behind her mother's forced smile. Maya whispered, her small hand brushing Aaliyah's arm, "Are we going to be okay today?" Aaliyah knelt down and embraced her daughter. "Yes, baby girl, we're going to be okay. I promise," she said softly, though her voice quivered. She wished she could make the promise feel real even to herself. The apartment was small, and every corner carried a story of hardship. Clothes were stacked in piles on the floor, dishes sat unwashed in the sink, and the walls bore the marks of years of life lived in struggle. Yet in the middle of this chaos, there was love, unbreakable, stubborn love. It radiated from Aaliyah's gentle smile, from the careful way she dressed her children, and from the stories she told them each night, stories of hope, resilience, and dreams that felt impossibly far away. Despite the hardship, Aaliyah was known in her neighborhood for her kindness. She would share what little she had with neighbors in need, often giving her last coins to help someone else, even if it meant she went without. Her heart had a capacity for empathy that was rare in a world that often seemed harsh and indifferent. That morning, as she tied her hair back in a neat braid, she reviewed the plan she had in her mind. She had no choice but to take her children to the local café, a high-end place she had never dared to enter before. She needed to speak to someone, anyone, who could help her get the urgent medicine her mother required. She had saved a tiny bit of money, but it wouldn't cover the full cost. She had hoped that a simple act of honesty and humility might move someone to help her. Her heart pounded as she dressed the children. Each of them carried the traces of their difficult life: the baby's worn onesie, Maya's frayed school uniform, and the boy's patched-up shoes. But she dressed them neatly, combing their hair and straightening collars, refusing to let poverty dictate their dignity. "Stay close to me," she whispered to them as they left the apartment, stepping into the early morning streets. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of baking bread from a nearby bakery and the distant hum of traffic. It was a world that had little patience for struggle, yet she stepped forward undeterred. The journey to the café was daunting. It was located in a wealthy district where polished cars lined the streets and uniformed staff moved with practiced precision. Every step Aaliyah took made her feel more conspicuous, more out of place. Her children clutched her hands tightly, sensing her tension. She passed stores with glistening windows, displaying cakes and pastries she could never afford, and restaurants filled with laughter and the soft clinking of silverware. Every glance from a passerby reminded her of the divide between her world and theirs. Yet in her heart a small flame of hope flickered. She would not turn back. Her mother's life depended on her courage. Her children's safety depended on her resilience. Finally, she arrived at the café. The tall glass doors reflected her tired but determined face. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for what she knew would be a trial. She pushed the door open, and the soft chime of a bell announced her entrance. Immediately, she felt the eyes of the patrons on her. The polished interior, gleaming tables, and the faint aroma of expensive coffee were intimidating. She approached the counter, where the manager, Mr. Collins, stood with a clipboard in his hands, scanning the room with a detached, authoritative air. He was the embodiment of wealth and arrogance, perfectly suited to enforce the rules of his kingdom. His gaze landed on Aaliyah, and she felt an involuntary shiver. I would like some water, please," she said softly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "For my children," her words were simple, honest. No grandeur, no pretense, just a plea for sustenance for her little ones. Yet, from the very first second, it was clear that Mr. Collins had no patience for humility. The manager's eyes narrowed, his mouth twisting into a sneer. "Water only? Do you take me for a fool? This is a restaurant, not a charity." Aaliyah's chest tightened, but she refused to let her voice break. I only wanted water for my children," she said, her words deliberate and calm, even as the children shuffled nervously behind her. The confrontation escalated quickly, as though the moment had been waiting all morning to erupt. Around them, diners watched silently. Some looked away, ashamed. Others whispered quietly to themselves, unwilling to get involved. Aaliyah felt the sting of isolation, trapped in a moment where society seemed to have forgotten her existence. All she wanted was help. All she wanted was dignity. And all she wanted was to save her mother, whose life depended on the small sum she was hoping to gather today. This was not just a trip to get water. It was a journey fueled by love, desperation, and courage. Aaliyah was risking everything: her pride, her comfort, her very sense of safety, for the sake of her children and her mother. And yet she could not know what awaited her beyond the counter, a moment that would change her life forever. Her hands clenched her purse, her knuckles whitening as she prepared to face the storm ahead. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her, but she refused to bow. She had faced hunger, sickness, and fear before. She could face this too. Little did she know, the day was about to take a turn that neither she nor anyone in that cafe could have anticipated. Aaliyah's heart pounded as she pushed open the tall glass doors of the café. The air inside was warm and fragrant with the smell of fresh pastries and roasted coffee beans. Polished tables gleamed under the soft chandelier lights, and patrons sat chatting quietly, savoring their morning luxuries. Everything about this place screamed wealth, sophistication, and exclusivity. And yet here she was, a young black mother in worn shoes, a tattered coat, and a heart brimming with desperate hope. Her children clung to her sides, their small hands trembling as they followed their mother into the intimidating environment. The baby in her arms whimpered softly, sensing the tension in her movements. Maya, her eldest, whispered, "Mom, do you think they'll help us?" Aaliyah bent down to meet her daughter's eyes, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "We have to try, baby girl. We have no choice, but we'll be okay, I promise." Her voice was steady, though the tightness in her chest betrayed her fear. She approached the counter where Mr. Collins, the cafe manager, was reviewing orders on a clipboard. He looked up at her, and Aaliyah immediately felt the weight of his disapproval. He was the kind of man who measured everyone by their appearance, their confidence, and their perceived social status, and she fit none of his ideals. "Good morning, ma'am," she said softly, trying to keep her voice calm. I would like some water for my children, please." Mr. Collins' eyes narrowed and a faint smirk curled across his face. "Water only for your children?" He leaned forward, resting his hands on the counter. His presence was imposing, almost suffocating. "Do you think this is a joke? This is a fine cafe, not a soup kitchen." Aaliyah swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight, but she refused to let her fear dominate her words. I, I just want them to have something to drink. That's all, please." The manager's expression darkened. He laughed bitterly, a sound that echoed off the marble and glass. "Please, you think politeness will get you far here? You have children, yes, but do you have money to pay for them? Or are you expecting us to indulge your poor little family for free?" Her grip on the counter tightened, knuckles white. She could feel the tension radiating from every patron in the room. Some were staring openly, mouths slightly open, unsure whether to intervene. Others whispered to themselves, eyes darting away, unwilling to confront the social discomfort this scene created. Aaliyah felt the crushing weight of isolation, the sting of being invisible, judged, and unprotected. "Sir, I only want water for my children. I have money, Her voice broke slightly, but she forced herself to continue. "I just don't have enough for food right now, just water for them." The words hung in the air like a fragile hope, and for a moment there was silence. Then Mr. Collins sneered, his lips curling in contempt. "You're pathetic. You come here flaunting your children as some sort of sad story, expecting people to feel sorry for you. Well, newsflash, lady, life isn't a storybook, and I don't care about your children." Aaliyah felt a pang in her chest, her eyes welling with tears she refused to let fall. She tried to swallow to steady her breathing, but the manager wasn't finished. "Honestly, why do you even bring them into places like this? They're going to learn nothing but embarrassment and rejection. Maybe that's all they deserve," he spat, his voice dripping with venom. The children clutched her sides tighter. The baby squirmed in her arms, sensing her mother's distress. Maya's small voice trembled as she asked, "Mom, why is he being so mean?" Aaliyah kneeled slightly, holding her daughter's hands in hers. He. He doesn't understand. Some people are cruel because of what they think, not because of the truth. But we're okay. We'll get through this." Despite her words, her heart ached. Every fiber of her being wanted to flee to escape the humiliation, but she couldn't. Her mother's medicine depended on her courage, her children depended on her resilience. She had no other option but to face this cruelty head-on. Around them, the cafe had grown silent. Patrons had stopped eating, stopped chatting. Some were staring openly, wide-eyed, while others averted their gaze, pretending not to see the confrontation. The indifference was palpable. Not one person stepped forward. Not one voice dared challenge the arrogance of the man behind the counter. "Why are you even here?" Mr. Collins demanded, leaning closer, his face inches from hers. "Do you think the world owes you anything, that someone like me should care about your problems?" I just want to help my family survive," she replied, her voice small but steady. "Is that so wrong?" "Wrong," he laughed bitterly. "Everything about you is wrong, your shoes, your coat, your life. This is a place for people who earn their lives, not for someone like you begging for water." Her eyes stung with tears, but she held them back. She had faced far worse in her life, days with no food, nights with no heat, months of worry over her mother's illness. She could face this too. Then, with a cruel smile, Mr. Collins gestured to her children. "You think they should be here? They're going to learn nothing but shame. Look at them. Look at their little faces, scared and confused. And why? Because of you, their failure of a mother." The words pierced her heart. Aaliyah knelt slightly, gathering her children close. You don't know anything about us, she whispered, her voice quivering. You don't know our struggles, our love, or our life. The manager sneered and waved her off. Get out, now. And don't come back unless you're ready to behave like everyone else in this city, like people who belong here. Aaliyah's shoulders slumped slightly. She had never felt so powerless, so exposed. And yet, even as humiliation threatened to break her, a small spark of defiance burned in her chest. She straightened her back, her chin lifting. I am not afraid of you, she said quietly, but with every ounce of strength in her body. I just want to take care of my children, that is all. The cafe remained silent. The patrons shifted in their seats, unsure of what to do. Some looked away, uncomfortable with the tension, others whispered to themselves. Not one person dared intervene. Aaliyah felt the sting of loneliness, the weight of facing the world's cruelty alone. Her children clutched her sides, looking up at her with a mixture of fear and admiration. In that moment, they were her anchor. She drew in a deep breath and looked Mr. Collins squarely in the eyes. You may think I'm nothing, she said, her voice trembling but firm. But I am my children's mother, and I will not let anyone humiliate me in front of them. I only ask for their water, nothing more, nothing less. Mr. Collins' lips curled into a smirk, but there was a hint of unease now in his eyes. He had expected her to collapse, to flee, or to beg more desperately. Instead, she had stood firm, holding her dignity like a shield. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Every patron, every employee seemed to hold their breath, sensing that this confrontation was about to reach a turning point. Aaliyah's small act of courage had illuminated the stark contrast between her humanity and his cruelty. And just as Mr. Collins opened his mouth to deliver another barb, a hush swept through the cafe. A figure stepped forward from the back of the room, tall, dignified, and exuding a quiet authority that demanded attention. The stranger's gaze swept over the scene, landing on Aaliyah, her children, and the cruel manager. The room seemed to shift in that instant. The weight of injustice, the sting of humiliation, the helplessness that had gripped the young mother, they all hung suspended in the air. And then the stranger's calm, commanding voice cut through the tension. That's enough. Every head turned. Every fork and cup froze mid-motion. And every eye in the cafe turned toward the man who had just taken a single, powerful step into the room. The cafe was tense. Every patron frozen mid-bite, mid-sip, mid-breath. The murmurs of disapproval, the whispers of unease, all dissolved into a thick, electric silence as the figure standing near the back of the room finally stepped forward. He was tall, well-built, and radiated a calm authority that demanded attention without a single harsh word. His suit was crisp, tailored to perfection, but it wasn't the clothing that made him stand out. It was the way he carried himself. Every movement deliberate, every glance measured, and yet soft with an unmistakable warmth. His eyes, a deep shade of blue, scanned the room and lingered on Aaliyah and her children with a mixture of concern, recognition, and compassion. For the first time that morning, Aaliyah felt her pulse slow, even if only slightly. The stranger's presence was like a shield against the hostility that had been pressing down on her chest for hours. He walked toward the counter, the soft click of his polished shoes echoing in the silent cafe. Each step seemed to assert control over the chaos, commanding respect and attention without a single raised voice. Sir, Mr. Collins sneered, clearly annoyed at the intrusion. This doesn't concern you. Move along before you cause trouble. The stranger stopped a few feet away, his gaze locked on the manager. There was no trace of fear, only calm, absolute authority. It does concern me, he said, his voice low but resonant. What you are doing is unacceptable. Leave her alone. Mr. Collins laughed, a sharp, condescending sound. And who are you supposed to be, some self-appointed hero, or just another busybody who thinks they can lecture me? Aaliyah's hands gripped her children's shoulders. She had seen cruelty before and arrogance, but there was something different about this man. Something that made even Mr. Collins hesitate, a flicker of uncertainty in the manager's eyes that hadn't been there before. I am here because this young woman, the stranger said, motioning toward Aaliyah, deserves to be treated with dignity, and because I do not tolerate injustice in my presence. The calm authority in his voice sent a ripple of shock through the room. Patrons leaned forward, their curiosity mixed with disbelief. Mr. Collins straightened, chest puffed, trying to reassert dominance. You don't know me, you don't know how I run this place, you can't. I do know you, the stranger interrupted, his voice now sharper but still calm. And I also know exactly who this young woman is. Aaliyah froze, her heart skipped a beat. Who was this man? How could he possibly know her? She glanced at him, fear and curiosity warring in her eyes. Mr. Collins' face twisted into a scowl. Enough of this. I will not be lectured by someone who thinks he can waltz into my restaurant and challenge my authority. The stranger stepped closer, leaning slightly toward the manager, but never raising his voice. Do you truly have any idea who you are speaking to? The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Aaliyah's children clung to her sides, sensing the tension rising to its peak. The other diners watched, barely daring to breathe, as if the very air had been electrified by the confrontation. Then came the moment that would forever change everything. I am the CEO of this entire company, the man said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of undeniable authority. And this young woman, he continued, gesturing toward Aaliyah, is someone I have been following not because I needed to, but because her integrity, her courage, and her kindness are extraordinary. This girl is special, very special. The words struck like lightning. Aaliyah's mouth fell open, her mind struggling to process what she had just heard. The CEO of the company, here, and he knew her. Mr. Collins' face turned pale, his arrogance faltering for the first time that morning. This is absurd. You're lying. You can't. I assure you I am not lying, the CEO said softly, yet every word carried unshakable truth. He took a step closer to Aaliyah, lowering his voice. You are safe now. I will take care of you and your children. You will never have to beg for water or face humiliation like this again. Aaliyah's knees threatened to buckle. Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden as the weight of hope and disbelief collided within her. Her children stared in awe, not fully understanding the gravity of the moment, but knowing that their mother's despair had been lifted, if only slightly, by the presence of this man. Mr. Collins, desperate to reclaim his dominance, spat out a venomous challenge. And who are you to tell me how to run my business? Just because you claim to be some CEO doesn't give you authority over me. The CEO's gaze did not waver. He stepped closer, calm but resolute. You have humiliated a young mother in my establishment, in front of my customers and in front of my eyes. That is not acceptable. He paused, letting the silence stretch. Every diner in the room leaned in, sensing the climax of the confrontation. You have no idea who she truly is, but I do, and now the world will know what you have done. Mr. Collins' smirk faltered. Confusion and fear began to creep into his expression. What do you mean? The CEO smiled faintly, a mixture of sadness and resolve. I mean that this young woman is under my protection. Her children are under my care, and as for you... His gaze bore into the manager, and the weight of it seemed to crush the man's arrogance in an instant. You are no longer welcome in this establishment. Effective immediately, you are fired. And I will be making sure that your behavior is known to everyone who matters. Aaliyah's hands trembled as the CEO turned to her, crouching slightly to meet her gaze. You have done nothing wrong, he said, voice softening. You acted out of love, courage, and necessity. That is everything. Your mother, your children, they will be taken care of. All of your struggles, all of your fears, they end here. For now. Tears poured down Aaliyah's face. She struggled to find words to articulate the mix of gratitude, shock, and disbelief that churned inside her. I don't know what to say. Thank you, The CEO placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. No need to say anything right now. Just breathe. You're safe. You're seen. And you are valued more than you can imagine. Her children's eyes mirrored her own, wide and glistening, as they realized that the nightmare of public humiliation was over. The tension in the café lifted, replaced by an almost reverent silence as diners processed the incredible scene they had just witnessed. Then came the final twist, the revelation that would leave everyone in the room stunned. The CEO's voice, calm but unwavering, cut through the stillness. Do you know why I care so much about this young woman? He asked, turning back to the manager. Mr. Collins blinked, unsure what was coming. Because she is my daughter, my adopted daughter. And you, he paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. You just humiliated a member of my family. The café erupted. Patrons gasped, some stood in shock, others whispered in disbelief. Mr. Collins turned pale, stumbling back as his arrogance dissolved into terror. Aaliyah's mind reeled. His daughter, my courage, mattered to him. Yes, the CEO continued, kneeling beside Aaliyah once more. She is my daughter, and she has never deserved anything but respect, care, and protection. Today you learned that cruelty has consequences. Aaliyah's voice trembled. I had no idea. I never expected. You expected only to survive, the CEO said gently. And yet you acted with integrity, love, and courage. That is why you are extraordinary. That is why I am here. The manager, now visibly shaking, tried to speak, but no words came. The power dynamic had shifted entirely. Aaliyah, once cornered and humiliated, now stood at the center of a revelation that would change not only her life, but the lives of everyone around her. The CEO turned fully to Aaliyah, smiling softly. This is only the beginning. Your bravery, your love, your sacrifice, they will not go unnoticed. I will ensure your family is safe, secure, and cared for. Today marks a new chapter in your life. Aaliyah's tears flowed freely now, a mixture of relief, astonishment, and overwhelming gratitude. She could hardly believe that after the torment she had endured, after the cruelty and humiliation, a single person's compassion, and the truth of her hidden connection, could completely alter her destiny. And just like that, everything changed. The cruelty of a manager, the silence of bystanders, and the despair of a young mother collided with the power of truth, love, and protection. The twist was more than shocking, it was life-altering. For Aaliyah, for her children, and for everyone in that cafe, nothing would ever be the same. The cafe remained hushed, the hum of conversation suspended as Mr. Collins stood frozen, his arrogance stripped bare. The manager, who had moments ago wielded authority like a weapon, now trembled under the weight of exposure. His confident posture crumbled, revealing the true man beneath, the one who had relied on cruelty to maintain control, only to have it collapse in an instant. The CEO's gaze never wavered from him. Calm but unyielding, he spoke with the authority of someone who could command the fate of anyone in the room. Mr. Collins, your behavior today has violated every principle of this establishment. You have humiliated a mother and her children, defied basic human decency, and embarrassed this company in front of witnesses. Your actions are unacceptable. Mr. Collins opened his mouth, a weak attempt at justification escaping, but the words faltered. You were just cruel, the CEO interrupted, his voice sharp but controlled. And for that there will be consequences. Effective immediately, you are terminated from your position. Your employment is over. You will leave this cafe now, and you will face the repercussions of your actions in full public view. The manager's face went pale. He tried to protest again, but the CEO's presence alone seemed to silence him. The staff behind the counter, who had witnessed his arrogance and cruelty day after day, now looked on with a mix of relief and satisfaction. For the first time, they saw justice enacted. One of the baristas stepped forward timidly, whispering, "Should we call security?" The CEO shook his head. "No, he will leave on his own, and he will be reminded that cruelty has consequences." Mr. Collins muttered something under his breath, but his steps were sluggish as he exited the cafe, every movement stripped of the confidence he had worn like armor. The patrons whispered among themselves, shaking their heads in disbelief at the downfall of a man who had seemed untouchable moments before. Aaliyah, still trembling from the whirlwind of events, felt her knees weaken. The weight of humiliation, fear, and anxiety she had carried all morning seemed to lift slightly, replaced by a cautious relief. She clutched her children close, inhaling their small, warm forms and realizing for the first time that day that she was safe. The CEO turned to her, kneeling to meet her eyes. His expression was gentle, the authoritative mask softened by genuine warmth. "You've been through far too much," he said. "No one should ever be treated the way you were today, but I promise from this moment forward things will change." Aaliyah's voice trembled. I don't even know where to start. I can't believe this is happening. How did you know me? Why help us?" The CEO smiled softly. "Because you are my daughter, Aaliyah, and because courage, kindness, and integrity are traits worth protecting. You have shown all three today, and that is why I will do everything in my power to ensure you and your children are safe, secure, and have opportunities that were denied to you before." Aaliyah blinked, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to say. I never imagined. I can't believe." "You don't have to say anything," he reassured her. "Just know that from this day forward, you are no longer alone. You are valued, you are protected, and your family will be cared for." He reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. "This contains enough to cover the urgent needs you have, medicine for your mother, proper food for your children, and anything else required immediately. But that is only the beginning. Your future is secure, and we will make sure you have the resources to thrive, not just survive." Aaliyah's hands shook as she took the envelope. Her mind was spinning, unable to comprehend the sudden shift from despair to hope. I don't even know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. The CEO placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me. You need to believe in yourself. You've survived so much already, and now you have the chance to live a life you deserve. We will get through this together." Her children peeked up at her from behind, eyes wide with a mix of confusion and awe. The youngest, sensing the change in energy, cooed softly in her arms. Maya, the eldest, whispered, "Mom, is it really true? Are we safe?" Aaliyah hugged her children tightly. Yes, baby girl, we're safe, more than safe. We're going to have a future now, one where we won't have to be afraid. The CEO watched her, a soft smile on his lips. And that is only the beginning. You will have access to education, healthcare, housing, and any opportunity your heart desires. Today, the world has changed for you, but tomorrow you will change it for yourself and your family. For the first time in years, Aaliyah allowed herself to breathe fully, unburdened by fear. The tension in her shoulders melted by a mixture of relief and disbelief. She had faced humiliation, judgment, and near despair, and yet through it all she had remained steadfast, compassionate, and brave. Thank you. I don't even know what to say, she whispered again, her voice trembling. Say this, the CEO said gently. Say that you will live, that you will thrive, that you will never let fear or cruelty define you. Today, justice has been served, and from now on, your life will reflect the courage you have shown. Aaliyah nodded, tears streaming freely now. I will, I promise. I will make the most of this. For my children, for my mother, for myself. The CEO's eyes glistened slightly, proud and tender. That is all I ask. Courage, integrity, and love, three things you've never lacked, even when the world tried to take them from you. Now it's time for the world to give them back to you. He took her hand, guiding her and her children toward a quiet corner of the cafe. Let's take a moment to breathe, to plan, to start anew. Today you have been seen, acknowledged, and protected. Tomorrow we will begin the work of rebuilding your life properly, safely, and with dignity. Aaliyah clutched his hand, feeling a warmth she had not felt in years. Her body, once tense with anxiety and fear, relaxed. She realized that the long, painful struggle that had defined her life was finally being met with compassion and power strong enough to make a difference. The CEO knelt once more to speak to the children directly. You are safe, you are loved, and you will have a future where no one can ever make you feel small or powerless again. The children's eyes widened, taking in the presence of a man who exuded authority but kindness in equal measure. For the first time, they believed that the nightmare of their mourning, mockery, fear, and shame, was behind them. Aaliyah whispered to her children, her voice filled with emotion, See, I told you, things will be okay, we're going to be okay. The CEO smiled at her, nodding. And more than okay, you're going to thrive, you're going to achieve everything you deserve and more. And no one, not today, not ever, will take that from you again. The cafe slowly returned to life, the whispers of the patrons now filled with all rather than discomfort. Some approached cautiously, offering murmured congratulations and admiration for the young mother who had faced cruelty with such bravery. Others simply watched, captivated by the incredible turn of events, the fall of arrogance, the rise of justice, and the start of a new life for a woman who had never given up hope. Aaliyah clutched her children, feeling a wave of gratitude she could not put into words. She looked at the CEO, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to ever repay you. He shook his head gently. You've already repaid the world, Aaliyah, with your courage, your love, and your integrity. The rest is just life catching up to the justice you deserve. For the first time in years, Aaliyah allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future filled with love, security, and possibility. The nightmare was over, the cruelty had been confronted, and justice at last had been served. Through courage, love, and unwavering integrity, Aaliyah had not only protected her children but had shown the world the power of resilience. Cruelty was confronted, justice was served, and a life of hardship was transformed into one of opportunity, hope, and redemption. Years had passed since that unforgettable day in the cafe. The memory of Mr. Collins' cruelty had faded, replaced by gratitude, joy, and a life that Aaliyah had once believed was impossible. The small apartment that had once felt cramped and suffocating had been replaced with a spacious, sunlit home. Every corner radiated warmth, care, and love, an environment carefully built to nurture her children and heal old wounds. Aaliyah herself had blossomed into a confident, educated, and accomplished woman. With the CEO's guidance and support, she had pursued opportunities she never thought possible. She had returned to school, earning a degree in social work, a field she had long admired but had never had the means to explore. Her mind, once clouded by anxiety and worry, now thrived on purpose, knowledge, and empowerment. Her children had grown too. Maya, the once timid 8-year-old, was now a vibrant teenager, strong-willed and intelligent, excelling in her studies and art. Her little brother, now 10, was a curious and kind-hearted boy, fascinated by science and engineering. And the youngest, who had been a fragile infant during that fateful morning, was now a bright, lively child, full of laughter and curiosity about the world. The CEO, who had once appeared in her life like a guardian angel, had become a constant presence, not just as her adoptive father, but as a mentor, supporter, and friend. The bond between them had grown stronger with each passing year, a relationship built on trust, love, and shared understanding of the trials Aaliyah had endured. One afternoon, the family gathered in the home's spacious kitchen. Aaliyah stood at the counter, preparing a simple meal with fresh vegetables and herbs. Maya helped her chop vegetables, humming softly, while the younger children played quietly nearby. The atmosphere was filled with laughter, warmth, and the simple joy of being together, an ordinary moment now infused with extraordinary meaning. The CEO entered the room, his presence commanding yet gentle as always. He watched Aaliyah with pride. "I'm amazed every day," he said softly, smiling. "You've taken everything life threw at you and built something beautiful, not just for yourself, but for your children." Aaliyah paused, glancing at him. "I couldn't have done it without you. You gave me a chance when I had nothing. You showed me that hope is real, that kindness can exist even in the harshest places." Her voice was filled with emotion, the words flowing freely now, unrestrained. He shook his head gently, his smile widening. "No, Aaliyah, you had it in you all along. I simply helped you see what you were capable of. You faced fear, humiliation, and despair, and you never lost your integrity or your love for your family. That is what made all of this possible." The room fell quiet for a moment, the weight of their shared journey settling around them. Aaliyah thought back to that morning in the café, the fear, the humiliation, the helplessness. And now, looking around at her children, at the life they had built together, she felt a profound sense of gratitude and triumph. Her eldest child, Maya, looked up at her and whispered, "Mom, do you remember when that man yelled at us in the café?" Aaliyah chuckled softly, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, baby girl, I remember. And I also remember how strong you were through it all." Maya's smile was bright and confident. "I'm strong because of you. You showed me how to stand up even when it's hard." The youngest children nodded in agreement, their small faces radiating admiration for their mother. Aaliyah's heart swelled. She realized that the trials they had faced together had not broken them. They had shaped them into a resilient, loving, and courageous family. Later that evening, they gathered in the living room, the warm glow of lamps reflecting off the walls. Aaliyah's mother, whose health had stabilized thanks to the medical care provided after the cafe incident, sat beside her daughter. "Aaliyah," she said softly, her voice filled with pride, "I never imagined we'd see a day like this. You've given us a life I thought we'd never have." Aaliyah reached for her mother's hand, squeezing it gently. "We earned it together, Mom, every struggle, every sleepless night. It led us here, and now we can live fully without fear." The CEO, sitting across from them, nodded in agreement. "You've turned courage into a life of opportunity, and the best part is this is just the beginning. There is no limit to what you and your family can achieve now." Aaliyah smiled, her eyes glistening. "I want to give back just like you gave to me. I want to help people who are struggling, who feel invisible and alone. I want them to see that life can change in an instant if someone believes in them or if they believe in themselves." The CEO's eyes softened, pride evident in his gaze. "And you will, because that is who you are. You turn hope into action. You transform struggle into strength. That is the legacy you will leave." Years had turned into a tapestry of small victories and monumental milestones. Aaliyah had started a community program to help single mothers in need, ensuring they had access to health care, education, and resources to care for their children. The program flourished under her guidance, becoming a beacon of hope for countless families who, like hers once, had been struggling in silence. Maya thrived in school and art competitions, earning scholarships and recognition for her creativity and intelligence. Her little brother's curiosity led him to excel in science fairs, and the youngest child blossomed in a nurturing environment, free from the fear that had once defined their earliest years. The family celebrated birthdays, holidays, and ordinary days with a sense of abundance that had nothing to do with money. Laughter filled their home, love infused every corner, and gratitude underpinned every interaction. One evening, as Aaliyah tucked her children into bed, she whispered, "Never forget how strong you are. Never let anyone make you feel small or powerless, and never stop believing in the goodness of the world. Because there are people who care, and sometimes miracles happen when you least expect them." Maya hugged her mother tightly. "I won't forget, Mom, I promise, and I'll be brave just like you." Aaliyah kissed her children's foreheads, her heart full. She knew that the journey of hardship had forged something unbreakable in all of them, a resilience, a love, and a hope that no cruelty could ever extinguish. The CEO watched from the doorway, smiling quietly. "They are remarkable," he whispered. just as remarkable as the courage that brought them here. Aaliyah turned, her eyes meeting his. Thank you for everything, for believing in me and us. I will never forget. He shook his head gently. It's not about me, Aaliyah. It's about what you already had within you. Today, you are proof that courage, kindness, and integrity can transform lives, not just your own, but countless others as well. And in that moment, the room was filled with peace, love, and an unshakable sense of possibility. Aaliyah's journey, from desperation and humiliation to hope, justice, and triumph, had come full circle. The scars of the past remained, yes, but they were softened by triumph, gratitude, and the promise of a brighter future. From the darkness of despair to the light of opportunity, Aaliyah's life proves that courage, love, and integrity are never wasted. The cruelty of one man could not destroy her spirit, and the kindness of another transformed not just her day, but her destiny. Today, her family thrives, her heart is full, and her life is a testament to the power of hope and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Humanity transcends wealth, status, and prejudice. A single act of courage and integrity can change a life, and sometimes that life can change the world. Never underestimate the power of hope, love, and the courage to stand tall, even when the world seems against you. The camera pans out, showing Aaliyah and her children laughing together in the sunlit living room, their faces glowing with the joy of safety, love, and opportunity. The CEO watches fondly from the doorway, a quiet guardian of a family whose future had been rewritten by compassion, courage, and justice.